Welcome back, y'all. So, last time we talked about copywriting in general for your digital presence. This time, I want to talk to you about 5 steps that you can use for your blog content to really make it shine and make it more serviceable for your goals. Before we jump into those 5 steps, though, I want to say a couple of things about blogs because I know some of you are going to look at this headline or listen to the first couple of lines of this and think, blogs? I don't need to care about blogs. That's like from 2012 era internet. And I would please encourage you to listen to this a little bit further and think about blogs, because if I didn't convince you last time, I just want to remind you, and I'd encourage you go back and listen to that episode, that a copy first digital strategy is the most accessible type of digital strategy for most businesses. Or I should maybe say most micro businesses or most small businesses, because going copy first requires the least amount of post-production and the least amount of equipment. Now, copywriting is not necessarily inexpensive. In fact, we talked a long time last time about how a great copywriter can actually be quite an investment. But what you don't have to invest in when you use a copy first strategy is a lot of post-production, a lot of things like lighting and microphones and studio setup and things of that nature. At most, what you need is a decent formatter, which almost anyone can become a decent formatter, sometimes an editor or a proofreader, and a great copywriter. And if you have a great copywriter, you might not even need the editor and the proofreader per se. You just need a second set of eyes. Now, before anyone who's in copy gets really mad at me, yes, the best case scenario is always to have an editor and or a proofreader. But if you're on a shoestring budget, if you're really managing cash flow tight, that may not be practical. And a great copywriter can get you 90% of the way there and is used to working without an editor. So you can put a second set of eyes on it, your VA or your assistant or your formatter, and that will be adequate. That's the advantage of a copy first strategy. The other advantage is from an SEO perspective, copy is still the most important thing. Copy is still where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. It's still where you're going to get the most time on page. It's still where you're going to get the most engagement. Copy really does rule. Yes, even in a video world for business. So, if you're not a video production person and you don't have all that equipment, I want you to take a deep breath because you don't have to. And what is all that equipment? Because I know a video production person would say, oh, you can do adequate video for certain types of things from your iPhone, things like that. It's not accessible for a lot of us. So I don't want to go too down the how important video is rabbit hole, because I do believe in it. I just believe in it as a part of a copy first strategy. So you're going to see me here on video. You could be watching this on YouTube. So I'm not telling you I don't believe in video. I do believe that every business, not every business, most micro businesses should be on a copy first strategy. So let's talk about those 5 steps to make sure that your blogs really maximize that investment that hopefully I've now convinced you you're going to make in copy. So step 1 is probably the place where people spend the least time and can give you the most reward. And that is a clear, concise, emotionally connected headline. I actually recommend, and I learned this from a copywriting teacher years ago, and I can't remember who it was. I went to look for it before the episode, and I couldn't find it. So if anybody knows who the teacher for this is, please message us, and we will give them credit. But I recommend using your headline with as much intentionality as you write your post. So our copywriters are instructed to write a headline 10 to 15 variations, so 10 to 15 times with different variations before they choose one. And we like to spend not as much time, but close to as much time in headline creation as we spend in most of the body creation. And the reason is that headlines are what many, many people will see. In fact, one of the problems with our political system, our clickbait issues, a lot of the short attention spans that we have is that on a lot of platforms, whether it be Facebook or Instagram stories or in your newsfeed or in LinkedIn or in a Google search, the headline is the only part of the piece you will see. And a lot of people will take whatever they want to take from the article only from that headline. And that really fucks with the world. I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit hole. But if you want any hope of getting engagement around your piece, the headline is largely going to determine that. Because where you're sharing it, whether it's sending it to your email list or posting it on a social media platform or someone coming across it in a Google search, all of those places are going to rely on the headline and sometimes a meta description for the choice of whether or not to click on it. So these are critical. I do want to stop here and say, if you want some help beyond what I'm going to tell you here for your headlines, you can go to realignyourstrategy.com and go to our podcast page and download a checklist for helping you with your blogging efforts. And on that checklist, there's a link to some super great instructions around developing headlines. So there are basically two types of headlines that are going to show up on your blog posts and all pages on the internet. The actual on-page headline, that's the one that shows on your site and in the meta title if you haven't customized the meta title. The on-page headline should prioritize interest, and it can be as long as you need to get your point across. I mean, not sentences, but several words plus a subheader or something like that is very common. Whereas the meta title, this second type of headline, is a specific length so that search engines will show the whole thing. Typically, I recommend right now in 2021, 55 to 60 characters because different mobile devices cut the headline off in search based on pixels. If you stay 55 to 60 characters, you're generally going to be safe. So that headline really needs to prioritize interest. And your headline really needs to use a keyword phrase within the first 3 words. So when we're thinking about search, even in 2021, keywords still really matter. So for example, if I'm writing a headline about coaching for digital marketing, we'll use us as an example. We are currently really invested in one of our packages that is oversight and coaching for businesses that are doing DIY digital strategy. So if I were trying to create an SEO optimized version of a page to promote that or a blog post about that, I would want to use a headline that put something like digital marketing coaching in the first 3 words of the headline. Now, there's keyword research involved that we'll talk about in another episode to getting that keyword phrase exactly right. But if digital marketing coaching comes at the end of the title, it's not going to pack as much of a punch. You're not going to get as much search credit for it. And yes, that is a pain in the ass, but I've seen it work so many times at this point, even just within the last couple of weeks, having retooled a bunch of these titles on an existing high traffic blog, that it's just something that you really want to invest the time in. So here's how this works. If you say 7 ways to choose a digital marketing coach, you're not getting quite into the first 3 words, and your headline is likely to not perform as well in search as it would if you flipped it around and said digital marketing coaching, 7 ways to pick one. So that's a really off the cuff way of presenting this, but it is important enough that I highly recommend you put intentionality towards putting that keyword phrase at the front of your title. Now, in addition to that, we want to make sure that that title contains a power word. So power words are a concept that comes from way back in the day from Ogilvy, and they are words that give an emotional connection, and they've been proven over and over again in digital to make people more likely to click on your thing. So there are 7 different types of power words essentially in digital. They are fear words, encouragement words, lustful words, angry words, greedy words, safety words, and forbidden words. These 7 different types come from Smart Blogger, and if you want to read the piece that we, way back, you're going to go back in the Wayback Machine. This is an old piece. So if you want to read the piece that we first, that I first started like sending people to for resources for this, you'll find that in our blogging checklist, and it comes from Smart Blogger. So I'm not going to go too deep into these, but these 7 types of power words are things like, in fear words, you might use words like painful or agony. In, apocalypse or blood curdling or panic. Now, in values-driven, anti-bro marketing world, we want to be really careful about fear words. Fear words work really, really well, but they often are super manipulative, and I really encourage you to not use making people afraid as a way to sell your products and services. For most of us, it's really going to violate our values, and it's going to feel gross, and it's going to attract people to us with emotional vulnerabilities, which is a whole nother thing that we may or may not want to deal with. So use fear words in your headlines carefully and consciously. Now, one word that I really feel hot about that gets used a lot in digital marketing that is a fear word is this idea of last chance or don't miss out. It's this creating artificial, what's the word I'm looking for? Creating artificial urgency. So real urgency is fine. You're closing enrollment for your program in 7 days. And that's really what you're doing. That's real urgency. So it's appropriate to use a phrase like last chance this time, we're closing enrollment in 7 days. But if your thing is actually opened all the time, or you're always selling this thing, if you're using the phrase last chance, it's really out of integrity. It's a violation of anyone who has a value of trust and truth. So I want you to be careful about how you use fear words. And some fear words are not the strong, pandemic words. They're ones that we use in marketing all the time, like last chance. So check in with yourself anytime you're going to use a fear word for one of your power words. What I like a lot better are your encouragement words. Those are words that are things like magic or marvelous or master or noble or perfect or persuade or seize or daring. Those are words that lift people up and help people to expand. Now, they don't always pack as immediate as of a punch as a fear word, and that's why, with the exception of maybe amazing, you don't see them as often. But over the long term, they will actually make people feel better about your brand and associate positive feelings with you, which is going to actually make them stick around longer for most people and be far less manipulative. Encouragement power words are much less manipulative than most of the other power words. So if you're not sure which area to stick to, try to stick there. The third type, lust power words, those are things like racy or risque or crave or delight or passionate or brazen or scandalous. You're going to see those lustful words on things related to selling lingerie or other things to make you feel or look sexy, but you're also going to see them in tabloid style journalism all the time. If you want to see lust power words done really manipulatively and sometimes really well, you'll see them there. Incidentally, you'll also see the lust words used a lot in lifestyle brands and laptop lifestyle brands, where what people are really wanting is freedom or financial freedom, or emotional freedom, or travel freedom, location freedom, and lustful words are used to hook them. Again, if you think about lust being one of the 7 deadly sins, right? Lustful words can be very manipulative and they have a dark side, so use them carefully. Anger power words are part of FUD marketing, and these types of power words are used, again, carefully, just like fear words, but can be really powerful when they are appropriate. So some of the anger words are things like punish, or rampant, or repel, or defile, or revolting, or delinquent. If you want to see how a power word for anger has been used really, really well, think about how many people refer to minors that have run into problems as delinquent teenagers or delinquent minors, or sometimes just call them the blanket word delinquents. That word is supercharged, as are most of the other anger words, and they dehumanize. So you need to be careful when you use them. That said, anger is really powerful when we use it properly. So if you use it properly, you use it for something where anger is an appropriate response, it could be helpful. Just do it consciously, not on accident. Then, greed power words. These are actually pretty fun. They don't tend to manipulate quite as much, except when you see them in the lifestyle brand and or the pay $19.99 and become a millionaire type zone. These are things that you might see in your mailbox when you get like a publisher's clearinghouse, because you'll see things like win or prize or dollar or profit or double or quadruple your income or total money makeover or things like massive, right? Things like that. Those like greed power words are, to me, there's a lot of upside in using them if, again, you use them appropriately. Now, probably the most common greed power word that you will see is free. And I could do a whole podcast on whether or not and when to use the word free, but I do just want to say here to be careful with using that word. In general, free will do 2 things. It will get people looking for a deal really excited, but it will get people who are invested in luxury and or invested in equity sometimes, things like that, really kind of turned off. So be careful how you use the free word, because it's one of those power words that's been really over manipulated, and so it can cause you a fair bit of trouble. Then the next one is safety power words. So safety power words are things like authentic. The reason why you see so many damn coaches who are anything but authentic using this authenticity word so often is because it gives people a sense of safety, real or not. You'll see these safety words used in like refundable or reliable or clockwork or foolproof or guaranteed or so scientific, money back, right? Safety words help people to feel safe. And they can be useful, like any power word, but they have a shadow side. Use them carefully and intentionally. And I think that's the theme of this section, right? Then forbidden power words. These are ones that I actually like to play with a lot, as long as you are using them in a way that is in integrity with your values. So forbidden power words are things like off the record, private, be the first, be an insider, elusive, spoiler alerts, shocking, the secret to something. Those kind of illicit feeling, forbidden power words, they help people feel like they're an insider. And that's what you're really doing when you use those words. So again, if you can use them in a way that is in integrity with your values, they can be really powerful. And in my experience, have less of a shadow side, not that there's not a shadow side, but like less of a hazardous shadow side to values-driven brands than some of the other types of power words. So I like to stay in the like uplifting and the forbidden zone as much as possible. So that's why I say putting a lot of time and intentionality into your headline, because just choosing a power word and getting your keyword phrase at the front is enough that it's probably going to take some time. And then you have to do a couple more things. You need to state a benefit to the reader. What are they going to get out of this piece? And you need to accurately describe what you're writing about. Let's talk about accurately describe. So social media platforms are full of clickbaity headlines that you will often click on the link, and what you get when you're there is nothing compared to what you saw in the headline, right? Some platforms have tried to devalue clickbait by adding things to their algorithm to combat it. Google has done this probably the best of platforms in comparison to social media platforms. But it's really important, if you want to be in integrity with your copy, that headline is accurate to what you're writing about. You don't use a headline just because you think it will grab attention to bait and switch something else. That's skeezy. Don't do it. Then one last thing that can be super useful if you can do it with your headline is to use a number. For example, 10 things you probably didn't know about writing headlines. Numbers get clicked on more, headlines with numbers get clicked on more often than almost any other type of headline. That's why you see so many listicle style posts, because they get clicked on, because they're easy to consume. So you can see where you could easily spend a couple of hours with creating a decent and intentional headline. And I'm going to recommend that you spend at least an hour, for most of us who are not used to doing this, creating your headline. In the old days of newspapers used to have people that their full-time job was headline writing. That's how important this is. So don't skip this step. You're really doing a disservice to the content that you either worked so hard on or paid good money for if you don't spend time on an intentional headline. Once you've done that, there is one more step for clickability that's really important, and that is step 2, which is a CTR-worthy meta description. So currently, a CTR-worthy meta description is right around 155 to 165 characters. It's about a sentence or two. And it contains the keyword phrase that you used in the title, because in a Google search, that will cause that phrase to bold when someone searches it. And then just like the title, it contains a power word. Think of your meta description kind of like a subheader to your title that's sole job is to get someone to click on your link. Because a meta description doesn't show up on your website, on your actual blog page, and it doesn't show up in all social media platforms. Mostly where it's used is on a Google search. And we come in all the time with new sites and rewrite all of their metadata, their titles and descriptions, and really transform the performance of their pages just with those two things. So spend some time with it. I highly recommend that you take at least an hour to write a really good title and a really good meta description if you're new to this process. Then step 3 is really diving down into your content. This is making sure that your content is people friendly. So there's a few things that are mechanical in nature here, and then I want to talk about what friendly content means for humans. So mechanical things is your body count. So in 2021, a blog should be at least 1,200 words, unless you're Seth Godin. He can get by with, a couple sentences and millions of people read it. But I can show you data over and over again. You're welcome to reach out to me and I can send you some case studies where Posts that are over 1,200 words perform 2 or 3 times as better as equivalent posts that are less than 1,200 words. So invest some time into writing a full post. Nothing makes me sadder than when I see a blog that has like 7,500,000 word posts, because that's the way we did it back in 2010 and 2012. And they've worked so hard on creating all this content, and it gets nowhere because the individual pages are too small. When what would have served them better is to write a quarter as much content. Then the next piece that you want to pay close attention to is making sure that the first sentence is catchy and emotionally appealing. Just like your headline gets people to click on your post, that first sentence will help people determine whether or not they want to keep scrolling. And if that first sentence doesn't pull them in, the likelihood that they're going to bounce off your page is really high. Then you want to make sure that all your language in the post sounds natural and fits the tone of your brand. All of our clients that we do copy work for have a brand voice guide as a part of their brand book that gives examples of the way they want phrasing used, how formal the language that they work with should be, and words they do and do not use in their content. For example, you're going to see me curse a whole lot, right? But some people are really uncomfortable with that. That should be explicitly stated in your brand guide and then followed in all of your blog posts. Next, you want to make sure that your keywords and links, if applicable, flow naturally and don't stand out. The days of keyword stuffing have been way over for a way long time. You only need to use your keyword 4 to 6 times on a 1,200 word piece. Use a few different variations of it here and there, and you're good. And never link a keyword alone directly. That is not good. Make sure you link a whole phrase to provide context. Next, you've heard me mention this one before, we're going to make sure that we've ran our content through the Hemingway app, which is linked to in the show notes. And you receive between a 5 and a 7 grade. Yes, we mean that. As I've told you before, the average American reads at a 5th grade reading level. So if you're writing things that are written for college level reading, you're going to leave vast amounts of the audience behind, and you're going to have a really hard time making a scannable piece for the internet. Use Hemingway. Don't cheat this. You'll be happy. Hemingway will also help you make your piece easily scannable, and you can go the extra mile with that by using bullet points and white space and headers intentionally. Then you want to make sure that you link to at least 2 reputable sources and set those links to open in a new tab. So many times I see people not wanting to link out because some SEO, hopefully years ago, because I hope they're not saying this anymore, has told them that it's bad for them to link to other websites, that they're giving away their credit. This is simply not true. The only time it's bad for you to link to other websites is if you're linking to sites that are deemed spam sites. And over time, that external linking will actually help you to build partnerships. It can help you to build relationships, and it's the right thing to do because cite your damn sources. We have this ridiculous problem online with not using citations, and linking to a reputable source in your content is the appropriate way to cite something online. Please do it at least twice in every blog post. In addition to external links, you want to make sure that your post contains 2 to 3 relevant internal links that reference further help. Don't set those to open in a new tab. Those are intentionally created to help someone go deeper into your website. All right, cool. You got all that? I told you it was a lot, so you're probably going to want to go download the checklist on our website so that you can have this beside you when you are creating your next blog post. So step 4 is SEO friendly content. We want to make sure that we are formatting our content with at least 3 subheaders beyond the H1 page title. Incidentally, if you're using WordPress, which a lot of us are for blogging, you never want to create an H1 inline because WordPress will automatically use an H1 for your page title. And if you create an H1, you're going to have 2, and Google hates that. It will kill your performance. So H2s, H3s are great. H1s, leave it alone if you're on WordPress. Then you also want to make sure that at least 2 of your subheaders contain a keyword phrase or a variation of a keyword phrase, like one with a synonym. And at least 1 subheader should reference the call to action for the piece. This is because when someone's scanning the piece, that reference makes it easy for them to see what the point is and what you want them to do next. Because the reality is, even though it pains my heart, most people won't read the whole piece. They'll scan. So using headers appropriately is both good for search, and we talked a lot about this last week. So if you want more information on how to use headers appropriately, go back to the episode 53 on copy first strategies. Use those headers appropriately, and you're going to make your post easy to scan. You want a call to action in there so when someone is scanning, they can see it and know what the next step you want them to do is. Then make sure that all of your images have alt tags and titles, and ideally they should contain a keyword or a keyword variant. Alt tags are the right thing to do because they make your images accessible to people who are visually impaired in some way. Also, they help search engines understand what your images are, which gives you a chance at image search. Then here's a good rule of thumb for using those headlines and where to put your images. Your content between headings should contain less than 200 words. So every 200 words or so, you need an image, a headline, a quote, something to break up the wall of text. Couple more just notes about your body content in step 4 to make it SEO friendly. Your keyword phrase needs to be mentioned in the first paragraph. Synonyms and phrase variations on the keyword phrase need to be present. It's not enough to stick a keyword in. You've got to have variations on that keyword. In fact, on every post we create, we have both a targeted keyword phrase and a targeted topic cluster associated with that keyword phrase. Those things will help you to have a chance at ranking with this amazing content that you created. Couple more notes, kind of call them bonus step 5s. Make sure that on blogs you're using passive voice to a minimum. And here's a hint. If you use the Hemingway app like I told you to, Hemingway will alert you by turning it purple whenever you're using passive voice, so you don't have to guess. You also want to make sure that you're using transition words liberally more than you would in regular written content offline, like next and finally and before and after. Those words actually keep a reader's eye moving down the page. And that helps with time on page, it helps on page scroll, it helps on dwell time, and all of that is going to give you a better chance at ranking, and it's also going to give you a better chance at getting the conversion to an email list that is the primary purpose of most blogs. So I know that was a lot that I gave you today, and I want to encourage you to go download the checklist from realignyourstrategy.com, print it out. We use this checklist every time we create and format a blog for a client because, as I've said to you before, consistency is a compounding problem. So if we use this checklist every time, we will make sure that we hit all of the best practices every time. And there are so many details here that if we don't use it every time, we will miss some. And it may not be the biggest deal the first time, or the second time, or even the 5th time, but over dozens or even hundreds of pages, this really becomes a huge missed opportunity. And then you have to come hire someone like me for 5 and 6 figures with big sites sometimes to come back and fix this problem on every page. I don't want that to happen to you. So use this blogging checklist just like a pilot's checklist every time you create a blog for your page, and you're going to give your content the best possible chance at shining, showing up, and gaining engagement. I'll see y'all next week.